Will the House please come back to order? In accordance with the provisions of Uniform Rule 51, I turn the gavel over to the President of the Senate, the Honorable Gary Stevens.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Will the joint session of the Alaska State Legislature please come to order? Madam Majority Leader Gavel.
Mr. President, I move and ask unanimous consent that the roll call of the Senate be waived and all members shown as present.
Thank you. Without objection, so ordered. Mr. Majority Leader Kopp.
Mr. President, I move and ask unanimous consent that the roll call of the House be waived and all members be shown as present.
Thank you. Without objection, so ordered. Will Senator Yunt and Representative Elam please escort U.S. Representative Nick Begich III into the chamber for this joint session.
Ladies and gentlemen, the U.S. Representative for the great state of Alaska is the Honorable Nick Begich III.
Governor, Mr. Speaker, President Stevens, Minority Leaders Shower and Costello, members of the legislature, thank you for the opportunity to be here today. It's great to be back in Juneau. This room is full of people who have dedicated themselves to making Alaska stronger, and I appreciate the work that you do. I know how much time and effort it takes to serve in this building, and I want you to know I respect it. You're on the front lines, balancing competing priorities, fighting for your districts, and making difficult decisions. I know that feeling well because I live it every single day in Washington, D.C. I also want to acknowledge my colleagues in the congressional delegation, Senator Murkowski and Senator Sullivan, who have been strong advocates for Alaska, and I appreciate our partnership in Washington together. None of us do this alone, and I wouldn't be standing here without the support of my family, my team, and the Alaskans who make public service possible. To my fellow members of the freshman class of 2025, I'm proud to be among you, and I'm extremely gratified to have a few good friends among your membership. Consider me a resource. I know exactly how you feel, because I feel the same way. You've got big ideas. You got a long to-do list. And you have a deep sense of responsibility to the people who sent you here to Juneau. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of time away from family, but I will assure you that it is worth it. There's nothing more rewarding than knowing that you're making a real difference for the people of this great state. Before I proceed any further, I want to acknowledge the tragedy that occurred outside of Nome. With the Bering Air flight, my heart goes out to the families and the friends and the entire community that are mourning this loss. Alaska is unfortunately no stranger to hardship, but time and again we see the incredible resilience of our people, and in the face of tragedy, Alaskans come together. In those moments, we're reminded of what makes our state so special. It's the people. But I have some happier news close to home. I want to take a moment to recognize Representative Calvin Schrage. Where's Calvin? Congratulations on the birth of your new daughter. Yep. £8, 5 ounces. And from the photos I saw, absolutely adorable and clearly takes after her mom. But congratulations to you both, and I hope that you are getting some level of sleep. I know that is challenging. Our son didn't sleep through the night for the first 13 months, and I thought we were going to go nuts. And what happened, we went to go see the pediatrician, and the pediatrician had told us 2 months earlier, let him sleep through the night. You've got to get some sleep. And we left that pediatrician's office, and we did not take the advice. She saw us 2 months later. She could tell we did not take the advice. So listen to your pediatrician on that one. I know I'm the one standing behind the lectern today, but I want to impress one thing upon each of you. I'm here to listen. Doesn't matter if you're an independent, a Republican, a Democrat. I represent you in D.C., and I want to look for opportunities for us to work together. You are the boots on the ground. You're the ones closest to the challenges and the opportunities that we have in our communities, and no one understands the needs of Alaska better than you do. Your insights and your concerns and your ideas shape the work that I do in Washington, and if there's something standing in the way of your priorities in Congress, I need you to let me know about it so we can work on that together. We know the challenges that we're up against as a state: rising costs, federal overreach, and an economy that is not necessarily firing on all cylinders. But we also know that there are tremendous opportunities in front of us right now. Alaska is a state that has been built on bold ideas and hard work, and we have the resources, the talent, and the drive necessary in order to lead, not just in energy, but in innovation, infrastructure, and economic growth for the entire nation. The question is not whether we can do it. The question is whether we are going to step up to the plate and demonstrate our leadership. For many of you, that's why you ran. You wanted to fight for our state. And I will tell you, that's why I ran for Congress. I wanted to be Alaska's voice in D.C. There's only one representative for all of Alaska, 435 total representatives in the United States House. We only get one, as Congressman Young was keen to remind us. And so you need a voice in D.C. that can articulate Alaska's argument. Why are we different? Why are we unique? And why do we present so many opportunities for the rest of our nation? One of the biggest developments our state has seen this year was President Trump's executive order focused on unleashing Alaska's economic and resource potential. And I will say it is refreshing to have an administration that not only values Alaska, but understands our role in America's energy and mineral future. This order, if you've not seen it, I encourage you to go read it in its entirety, lays out a bold vision, opening up development, streamlining permitting, and prioritizing Alaska's energy production. Of course, we all know that the devil is in the details, and a lot depends on who gets put in charge of these policies, and that's where we come in. No one understands Alaska better than Alaskans. We are the experts on development in Alaska. We have the strongest environmental standards of any jurisdiction in the world, and I remind my colleagues on a regular basis, we shouldn't be pushing work of development to nations that have low standards. If you care about the earth, and I certainly do, we should push that work to the highest environmental standard jurisdictions, and that's Alaska. Alaska should be the powerhouse of American energy. We have the resources, the expertise, and the workforce to meet our energy needs and strengthen America's energy security. Right now, we're seeing very encouraging news about Alaska's LNG pipeline prospects. Momentum that we, quite frankly, have not seen in a long time. We have a new solid partner on board with Glenfarne LLC that is working with AGDC to lead the project, and that's a huge step forward. Glenfarne is a serious player in the LNG industry, and they have experience and resources necessary to help bring this across the finish line. I have personally spoken with members of the Japanese Foreign Ministry. They are very serious about this project. As we know, we've needed an anchor customer for LNG to make that make sense. And it appears as though we've got one on the horizon with Japan. And I know that those meetings are happening on a daily basis and will continue to happen as the Japanese look to strengthen our allied relationship with them. Particularly important as more focus is put onto the Indo-Pacific region. These are huge positive steps. And I'm working closely with our state, our federal, and industry partners to identify and eliminate potential obstacles for Alaska's LNG prospects. If you're aware of any obstacles and you would like to let us know, let us work for you. Work with our office. We want to be advocates for you in this respect. Since taking office, I've been focused on cutting through the noise and making sure Alaska gets results. That means ensuring Washington keeps its promises, especially to our Alaska Native communities. That's why I was proud to introduce House Resolution 42, the Alaska Native Settlement Trust Eligibility Act, which fixes an unfair flaw in federal law that was forcing blind, disabled, and elderly Alaska Natives to choose between receiving their settlement trust benefits or staying eligible for federal assistance programs like supplemental security income, SNAP, and housing assistance. These trusts were set up to support Alaska Native shareholders, but an oversight in the law counted payments as income, hurting the very people that they were meant to help. H.R. 42 ensures they don't lose critical assistance just for accepting what is rightfully theirs. I also introduced House Resolution 43, the Alaska Native Village Municipal Lands Restoration Act, which returns more than 11,500 acres of land to Alaska Native Village corporations, and it is something that this body has supported in the past. That land should be and hopefully will be used for housing, development, and community expansion and not tied up in red tape. Both these bills, and I want to emphasize, both these bills passed with bipartisan support, overwhelming bipartisan support, in fact. Only one vote against one of the bills. Everyone else voted for them. That tells you where the Congress is at when it comes to Alaska issues. The bills were bipartisan, and I'd like to take a moment to thank Representative Mary Peltola, who first introduced these bills in the House Natural Resources Committee. You know, it's so important to recognize that so much of the work that is done in D.C. actually ends up being bipartisan. In fact, I would guess more than 80% of the bills that have been passed in this Congress to date have been bipartisan bills. And that is the nature of the work. It doesn't make the news all the time. You won't see it in the headlines. But the blocking and tackling, the base hits, that's being done in a bipartisan fashion. And that's why I'm looking to everyone here to work with my office and identify opportunities like these where we can work together for the betterment of the entire state. Now I want to turn to a topic that's unarguably one of the most important in our state, both economically and culturally, and that's our Alaskan fisheries. To say that fishing is a way of life would be an understatement. Our fisheries are what so many Alaskans live and breathe every day, particularly in coastal Alaska. Alaska's fisheries are an inseparable component of our economy and a resounding symbol of our own identity as Alaskans. As the industry that employs more Alaskans than any other, our fisheries are Alaska's primary source of food security, while also serving as a critical economic driver, generating billions in revenue for hardworking families across Alaska every year. As the industry is unfortunately under significant pressure, we need to make sure that we are providing support at the federal level. When there are disaster declarations, it can't be delayed 2 years, 3 years, in one case even 6 years before Alaska's hardworking fishing families see relief. It has to be done right away. We've had unprecedented closures in the Bering Sea on our snow crab fisheries, a shocking decline among certain salmon species in certain areas of the state, including the Yukon River. And this should concern everyone. Even if you don't happen to represent that region, this is of concern to everyone in the entire state. As a resource-rich state, we cannot afford to exercise selective oversight of our endowed perpetual resources. This is true across all industries, but particularly true within Alaska's fisheries. Congress must continue its work, and I will continue that work, to ensure a streamlined and efficient approach to distributing disaster relief funds. We have to protect Alaska's fisheries. We have to protect Alaska's economic future. Our recreational fishing heritage and our subsistence way of life are key to the Alaskan identity, and I am committed to defending this resource so that we may secure Alaska's fisheries in perpetuity for generations yet to come. Alaska's economy and our future depend on a strong, reliable infrastructure. Whether it's ports, rails, roads, or energy, we need modern and resilient systems that support growth, can keep costs down. Right now, I'm focused on real, hard infrastructure investment opportunities for our state. One such priority is developing Port McKenzie to provide critical redundancy for the Don Young Port of Alaska. Representative Kevin McCabe has been a champion of this effort, and I'm working to help move it forward. Having a fully functional alternative in the Cook Inlet strengthens our supply chain and ensures that we are not overly reliant on one single point of failure. And I refer to this as port diversity. It's a port diversity strategy that we need to have in order to make sure that we are able to provide the goods that Alaskans rely on a daily basis. Beyond our ports, Alaska needs better connections to the lower 48, and that means finally establishing a rail-to-rail connection through Canada. This project has enormous potential to lower the cost of living in Alaska by lowering shipping costs, improving supply chain reliability, and creating new trade opportunities, new mineral development opportunities, and new energy opportunities for Alaska. And I'm committed to working with stakeholders at the state and federal levels to move this project's vision forward. And just as by way of information, I am on the Railway, Pipeline, and Hazardous Materials Subcommittee and Transportation and Infrastructure, so we will be talking a lot about this project in the coming months and years. We also need to make sure that we preserve and strengthen Southeast Alaska's marine highway system. This is a lifeline among Alaska's coastal communities. And you notice that I didn't use the word ferries. I said marine highway. It's a highway. And it utilizes funds from the Department of Transportation, from our Highway Trust Fund, in order to operate, and that must continue. Of course, affordable, reliable energy is the backbone of everything. I'm focused on expanding power generation to lower energy costs and make sure our power transmission infrastructure is resilient. We have extreme conditions, as we just rediscovered in Anchorage, with over 100-mile-an-hour winds. I can tell you there were tiles ripped off my roof. We know we live in an extreme environment. We have to have a grid that can sustain itself, as we are so reliant on that grid for heating our homes and turning on the lights. Infrastructure isn't only about moving goods. It's about keeping our economy strong, our communities connected, and our cost of living in Alaska manageable. And I will keep fighting to make sure hard infrastructure investments remain prioritized in the Congress. Now, before I wrap up, I want to introduce a couple of key members of my team who are here with me today. Many of you already know Josh Walton. Where's Josh? Josh is no stranger to Juneau. He was Chief of Staff to Mia Costello and Chief of Staff to Laddie Shaw, so he comes with a lot of legislative experience, but perhaps even more important, legislative relationships with folks here in the building. So please utilize Josh. I'm sure his phone will be blowing up after this meeting, but utilize Josh as a resource. We have a number of Alaskans in our office in D.C. We did that by design. We want to make sure that Alaskans are heard and represented by people who are Alaskans. I also want to introduce our new state director, Rick Whitbeck. Many of you know Rick was the former state director for Power of the Future. He comes to the table with a very strong energy background and is an absolute powerhouse for our team, and I really appreciate your willingness to join on to this effort. Thank you, Rick. We have a number of other team members that I'll just briefly mention for your own awareness. Anchorage Regional Director Portia Babcock Samuels, our Fairbanks Regional Director Leslie Hadukovich, Constituent Liaison Denali Chibaka, and our Green and Gold Fellow Ryan Chatterton, who is working specifically on veterans issues in our office. They couldn't join us in Juneau today, but they're top-notch, and I'm sure that they're going to do great work together with you and your constituents. We are here to help. If there's something I can do to move Alaska forward, I want to hear from you. Reach out and let's work together. Alaska is a land of opportunity. We all know that. It's why most of us are here in this room. We want to fight for Alaska and fight for the people of Alaska. I'm honored to serve you as your representative. I look forward to working with all of you to build a stronger and more prosperous Alaska together. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today. It's a great honor to be here among you. Thank you for all you do on behalf of the great state of Alaska, and may God bless Alaska and these great United States. Thank you.
Representative Begich, thank you very much. He has agreed to some questions, so we'll begin with Representative Burke.
Thank you. Thank you, President Stevens. Congressman Begich, thank you for being here. Essential air services is critical to Alaska and rural Alaska in particular. I've had a number of people express concern to me. Can you assure us that the federal delegation is doing everything that they can to protect essential air services in Alaska?
We are. Essential air service is critical, and it's a critical way that we move people and goods throughout the state. More than 80% of the communities in Alaska do not have road access. It's a separate problem we need to work on, but the reality is if we lose essential air service, we're going to lose the ability for people to be able to live in their own hometown. And so EAS is something that I've been having conversations with the Department of Transportation on. It's something that I believe we need to make sure we preserve and defend, and I'm working hard to do that, and I appreciate that question. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go to Senator Kaufman.
Thank you, Congressman Begich. It's good to say that. Just wondering if you can give us an update on what's being done to reform immigration.
That is a great question. There is much that is being done to reform immigration. Let me first talk about securing our most southern border, as I have to remind my colleagues in the Congress, our nation's most southern border. We have seen illegal crossings drop dramatically in the last several weeks. And this is a result of the illegal immigration crackdown that we've seen from the Trump administration. There's been a great deal of progress on that. We saw border crossings as high as 11,000 per day under the previous administration. Now we're seeing sub 300 a day. So that is really important, and that is really good. And you know, we live here in Alaska, and some may wonder, why does this impact us in Alaska? Because the services that have been consumed by the folks that have entered our nation illegally are taking away from needy citizens that need support in programs like SNAP and Medicare and Medicaid. And I'll just briefly mention, while we're on the topic, here are some of the programs that illegal aliens in the United States under the previous administration have been using. They've been using SNAP, child nutrition programs, supplemental security income, as I mentioned, Medicare and Medicaid. They've been applying for and getting Pell Grants for college, student loans, and even public housing at a time when we see even a nationwide housing crisis. And so I think that's one side of the equation when you talk about illegal immigration. I think we need to do more to accelerate legal immigration to our nation. We need the best people. And most of the people in this room are descendants of immigrants. I think this is one of our great secrets as a nation over time, is that we've brought some of the hardest working, some of the best, some of the most intelligent people from around the world to be a part of our society. And I hope that that continues, and I will work to make sure that it continues, because I think a legal, healthy immigration program is good for the nation.
Thank you. Representative Josephson.
Thank you. Good morning, Congressman. We haven't had the pleasure of meeting one another. Your grandfather and my father were roommates in this city, and they both served in the state Senate together. And when he tragically died, my father eulogized him at 1973 memorial service. My question is about foreign policy. So, as you know, after World War II, we had the Truman Doctrine to protect Greece and Turkey through a doctrine of containment of aggression, and it was successful. In Korea, we had a partial win, largely a win, under Truman and then Eisenhower. In Vietnam, we fought valiantly, but under Johnson and Nixon, we ultimately failed. But again, we gave it our all. Reagan certainly opposed aggression and did everything he could. And our senators, Senators Sullivan and Murkowski, have stood behind Ukraine. And I appreciate that, and I respect them for that. But I'm incredulous that our president seems to almost be taking some pleasure in the predicament Ukraine finds itself in. He's supporting, essentially, the aggressor. He's asking Zelensky to come to his knees and bend to a settlement there. And he's actually saying that Ukraine started the war, which is completely inaccurate. And everyone knows it's inaccurate. Do you stand with Senator Sullivan and Senator Murkowski in America's desire to protect the interests of Ukraine?
That's a great question. I appreciate the question. I stand for peace, and I want to see peace in Ukraine. And I think that's what the people of Ukraine deserve. There have been millions of individuals who have tragically died in that war, and U.S. taxpayer money has been used to fund so much of that war. By some estimates, $200 billion, other estimates up to $350 billion of U.S. taxpayer money used to defend Ukraine. Now, how does that compare in relation to what Europe has provided? Remembering that this is on their doorstep, we have dramatically outspent all of Europe combined in supporting Ukraine's effort at defending itself from Russian aggression. And so I think there has to be a limit to how much the U.S. taxpayer is asked to provide for global defense, particularly at a time when we know that our own defenses, and we've been told by leaders in the Department of Defense, are depleted as a result of our support. And so I encourage all efforts to support and find a way through this conflict to a peaceful resolution. Do I believe that that peaceful resolution will be amenable to everyone? No, it's not going to be. But I do think that the people of Ukraine deserve an opportunity for peace.
Thank you. Senator Myers.
Thank you. Congressman Begich, do you remember the Doge caucus? Elon has been getting a lot of the headlines with Doge in the executive branch. I was wondering if you could update us a little bit about what's going on with Doge in the congressional branch.
Thank you. So just to clarify, I appreciate the question. Doge is in the news quite a bit. There is an executive branch work stream that's being led by Elon Musk and a number of others, some of them very young. And as I have said, young people deserve an opportunity to help solve this problem because they're going to be the ones that inherit the problem. And I would never tell a young person that they're not capable of doing great things. They are. But there is an additional component of Doge that is actually a bipartisan effort in the Congress, includes Republicans and Democrats, working together to find opportunities to trim government where there's waste, fraud, or abuse. And so I am a member of that caucus, as I am many other caucuses in the Congress, but I'm a member of that caucus. But let me tell you some things that have been uncovered so far. And quite frankly, in my opinion, this is one person's opinion, these are not things that we should be spending taxpayer money on. $1.5 million to support DEI in Serbian workplaces. $1 million to help disabled people in Tajikistan become climate leaders. $22 million for inclusive political processes in Moldova. $47 million for improving learning outcomes in Asia. I know learning outcomes and education is a big part of our discussion in this legislative session, and we spent $47 million of U.S. taxpayer money on learning outcomes in Asia. You know, often I think about a situation where you got a single mom. She's at home, she's got 2 kids. She's working. Maybe she's got 2 jobs and she is paying her taxes. How much of her money should go to waste, fraud, and abuse? How much of her money should go to these programs? The answer should be 0. And it's incumbent on the members of Congress and the executive branch, regardless of what party they're in, to make sure that the taxpayer resources are being spent in a responsible fashion. That's what DOGE is attempting to do. It's not unique to this president. We've seen other presidents attempt to do the same thing, going from Obama and Biden and even Clinton. And so efforts to rein in unnecessary government spending have been going on for a long time. We have to get control of our federal debt and deficit. And I will tell you, my colleagues on the other side of the aisle agree with me on this. We may not agree on how we get there, but we agree that we need to get there because we're at 125% debt to GDP ratio right now. Most economists will tell you that once you exceed 100 to 110%, you're on an unsustainable fiscal path that can lead to what they call a debt spiral, where you're borrowing to pay and then borrowing to pay that. We have exceeded over $1 trillion in interest payments in the last 12 months. And it is set to consume the entire federal budget if it were to continue. So we have to rein it in. And I won't stand before you and say that it's going to be a perfect process. And it's not entirely up to me what rolls out, okay? But here's what I've said to those that I've spoken with while I've been back in the state this week, and I want to say it to you too. If you have individuals in your districts that have been laid off, that you believe should have that job, that their job is a core function of the federal government. If you have programs that have been put on hold that you believe are a core function of the federal government and necessary in Alaska, reach out to our office because we want to be an advocate with you, with the appropriate agencies, but we need those details from you in order to be that advocate. So please reach out. I recognize the process won't be perfect. And because I know that, I want to make sure that we are advocating for the right kinds of people and programs that we need in Alaska.
Thank you. Representative Fields.
Thank you, Congressman Begich. Yeah, on that topic, the layoffs and freezes have been a catastrophe for Alaska, and I'm particularly concerned about the freezes on energy projects. So Congressman Young, Congresswoman Peltola, Senator Sullivan, Senator Murkowski secured $750 million in projects that are currently frozen. This is illegal. These are previously appropriated funds. We need you to go to bat to get these funds going into development. Failure to do so significantly increases the likelihood of blackouts in the rail belt. And ultimately, we need you to exercise the power of the purse, the power of appropriation. That is the main check that Congress has on unconstitutional acts of the president.
Yep. I appreciate that comment. I'm aware of those projects and programs. There are a number of them that we've already started having conversations on, especially as it relates to rail belt grid resiliency. And so I'm supporting that. I'm working with my colleagues in the appropriate committees of jurisdiction to try to protect those programs for Alaska. But thank you for raising those.
Thank you. Representative Gray.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thanks for being here, Congressman Begich. My question is also about federal funding. Some people don't know it, but most of us here do know that this state runs on federal dollars. Congressman Don Young famously fought tooth and nail to direct every possible federal dollar to our young state. And with the funding freeze, with the potential for massive cuts, you know, we need to know as we plan our budget How much federal money are we going to get? What does the future look like? And for our nonprofits and our healthcare organizations, which are absolutely reliant on federal dollars, what advice can you give to us as a state and to all these organizations here that depend on federal money?
Yeah, that's a great question. And as I mentioned earlier, and I'll restate now, if you're among those that are affected, and I'm speaking to the people at home, if you're in an organization that you're concerned could be cut or is affected by a freeze, please reach out to our office because we want to be advocates for you. We recognize that Alaska is unique and it is different. It is harder to provide these kinds of services, particularly healthcare services in Alaska. It's more expensive. The travel is very difficult, and we need to make sure that we have the appropriate level of funding to continue to support healthy lifestyles and people for their ability to remain in their communities in Alaska. So that is crucial. I do recognize that among all the states, we are the second most federally dependent state in the country, I think behind New Mexico, depending on which survey you're looking at. And I want to say very clearly that does present a problem for Alaska. It presents a problem for Alaska and a challenge for this body and for the delegation down in D.C. We need to make sure that we open up Alaska for more private sector development. Part of the reason why federal dollars have become such a large share of what happens in our state as our state's GDP is because we have not had the full and complete opportunity to develop our resources. And for those who are students of history, you know that this was part of the debate when we became a state. Part of the debate was, can Alaska sustain itself without becoming essentially a federal colony? Well, we know we can, but the federal government has stood in the way of our ability to do that. And they have, through these rules that were passed down even as recently as a couple months ago, done everything they could do to shut down Alaska's ability to grow our private sector economy and jobs base. What I would like to see is development, yes, for raw materials, but if we can get that gas line and some other sources of low-cost power, adding value to the resources that we extract, making sure that we add refining and smelting capacity, that we can take things through to manufacturing completion. If you've got a phone in front of you or in your purse or pocket, think about this next time you pick it up. We produce some of the raw materials in Alaska that go into that phone. But then they're shipped to a place like China. The next time you see those resources is in a phone. Think of all the economic activity that we missed out on as a result of that. We've got to make sure that we're building the supply chain's next steps here in state, and if we can do that, we can fully diversify our economic base. That's a long-term strategy. In the short term, we need to make sure that we have the federal support that we need, but I think this moment highlights the fact that Alaska has become too federally dependent, and we need to increase the diversity of that mix with the private sector.
Thank you. Representative Mena.
Thank you, Congressmember Begich, for your address. I wanted to talk about Medicaid. Medicaid covers 1 in 4 Alaskans. Medicaid helps Alaskans work. It helps grow young children. It helps young professionals. It helps serve our elderly and our poor and our disabled. And currently, the draft congressional budget would drastically cut Medicaid, jeopardizing lives, hurting our workforce, and uprooting our healthcare system. And it would leave thousands without coverage that would shift millions from the feds to our state. And that would make it impossible for us to be able to pay for a lot of our state services or even a PFD. And I wanted to ask, what will you do in light of these threats to Medicaid to protect Alaskans and our state's financial stability?
Yeah, that's a great question. And Medicaid is something that is being discussed in the conference. Medicaid has grown by 51% nationally since 2019. It dramatically expanded in its scope and scale under the Biden administration. And one of the things that I think is on the horizon is a strong likelihood of work requirements for Medicaid. So for able-bodied persons who are on this healthcare welfare program, making sure that they are either working 80 hours a week or that they're volunteering 80 hours a week. And that is a requirement. I'm sorry, I said a week. I meant a month. I work 80 hours a week. I work 80 hours a week, as do many in this body. But I do think it's important for people that are able-bodied to contribute. I think that that's what we should expect. I think that's what the taxpayers expect. The taxpayers are working and paying the taxes. They expect people who receive welfare benefits who are able to work to do so. And when we do that, when we reinstitute those kinds of rules, it actually makes these programs more solvent for the people who need them most, which are the blind, the disabled, elderly, right? We need to make sure we preserve these programs for those people. One of the things that I mentioned earlier was the way in which the illegal immigrant population has been utilizing a number of the services that the poor and the least advantaged among us rely upon to make it every day. And it's incumbent on us to make sure that in those situations and in situations where people who can contribute, that they are contributing, that we are doing the work to make sure these programs remain solvent for the people who need them the most. And that is what I will continue to work on doing while I'm in Congress.
Thank you. And our final question will be from Senator Hughes. Senator Hughes.
Thank you, Congressman Begich. It is very good to see you behind that podium. When our nation was founded, the system of government that was designed by our founding fathers was to have balance between the states and the federal government. And over the decades, whether the Congress was controlled by Democrats or Republicans, or whether there was a Democrat or Republican in the White House, in recent decades, the power has swung to the federal government. My sense, and I would like you to either confirm it or correct me, is that part of increasing the efficiency with the federal government will to be return certain powers and authorities back to the states. And we have heard that the president is considering what to do with the U.S. Department of Education. And we're having a tremendous debate in this building about education because every single person in this room really cares about our children, and we understand they are the future of this state. So as we're looking at the balance of power, maybe some things returning to state legislatures, can you talk to us a little bit about what you're hearing as far as federal funding related to schools? And then this is slightly different, it's quite different from schools, but it also has to do with the future of our children. We are a young state, as you mentioned, and when we look at a map, we hardly see any roads in this state. And I would hope that there would be an understanding and a way for us to access some of the funds that the other states received in earlier decades so that we could build more roads, and that we, as a state legislature and as our State Department of Transportation, would have more authority over making that happen. So could you speak to the balance of power in regard to education and road infrastructure? Thank you.
You bet. Thank you. That's a great question, and particularly timely given the debate that's happening in these chambers. I will tell you that as it relates to education, what we saw under the Biden administration was what we've seen in other administrations, an attempt to utilize federal funding to change the direction of education at the state level, where certain requirements, whether they be DEI or other requirements, were handed down to school districts saying you will implement this or you will risk losing your federal funding. Now we see that the opposite is true. You will remove DEI from the school curriculum, or you will risk losing your federal funding. I'm one who believes that we need to block grant these funds to the states to allow them to make their own decisions about education in their state. And I think that the decisions that are made best are made by those who are closest to the communities. And you certainly don't want people thousands of miles away in Washington, D.C., telling Alaskans how to live. This is a common theme, Republican and Democrat, in Alaska. We don't want to see Washington tell us what to do. Well, other states feel the same way. And so we should not seek to have federal centralized authority telling states how they should educate. Since the formation of the Department of Education, test scores have demonstrably fallen. We have fallen behind. We are actually doing worse under the jurisdiction of the Department of Education. I think those dollars need to be directed back to the states, where states can make more informed decisions about how they'd like to see them deployed. And your second question, roads. Thank you. There is a map And I'll direct folks here in the body, folks who may be watching at home. There is a map that was produced by the Alaska Department of Transportation, and I don't remember the exact year, I think it was the early 70s, that showed the aspirational roads, the big programs that we would like to see in order to open up the state. Roads to places like Nome that have been discussed even before statehood. And there was a lot of optimism at that time that we would be able to open up the state, that we would be able to lower the cost of living in remote parts of Alaska through road infrastructure. And when you look at that map and you see what the aspirational roads are, almost none of them got built. And that map is over 50 years old. I would encourage you to go look at that map and see the vision of those who came before us in these chambers and see what they had in mind for the state of Alaska. You're right about the fact that Alaska missed out on the initial wave of federal funding for building national highways. We weren't a state yet. And in the ensuing decades, a gigantic morass of requirements emerged from NEPA and the EPA and others that make it far more expensive to do the work that was done previously. And so it's my view that Alaska needs to make that case to say, look, we have been left out of this federal funding infrastructure investment, and it needs to be adjusted for inflation, and it needs to be adjusted for the increased requirements that have rolled out since the initial funding was rolled out in the previous century.
Thank you very much, Representative. We have several questions out there we're not going to be able to get to, but I'm sure that folks will find you in the hallway. Thank you so much for being here with us.
Thank you.
Madam Majority.
Mr. President, I move that the joint session be adjourned.
Thank you. Without objection, the joint session is adjourned.